That's where you want to be. You want to be in a situation where it's not just like, oh, maybe I'll see them, maybe I won't. No, if you stop seeing them, it means the structures in your life tangibly have moved.
Friendship prenup. Friendship
Oh
prenup.
my
God.
Worlds Beyond Number. It's been a year. How are you guys feeling?
Woo!
Over the dang moon.
Yeah!
I love it. I think my first question for you guys is just looking back at what you guys have been able to accomplish in a year. What have you learned, not just as storytellers, but as people who now are co-owners of this brand, of this little company?
All right, way to come out with a good question that requires thought.
It's a very special thing to find people that you can gel with as storytellers who share your creative sensibilities. It is an incredibly rare gift to find people whose work ethic matches your own and whose sense of responsibility and obligation when you begin an endeavor that has to deal with people's livelihoods and has to deal with creating something together. That's very rare. Finding three people that are both of those things is so rare that it staggers the mind.
Aw, that was so sweet. Okay, well, fine.
Now everyone else give an answer slightly better than the one that came before it. Starting now, Abria. Now, go now.
It's not going to be better. I will fail this out the gate. I think there's something really fun and freeing about having just there's something about it's a brain trust. It's like a little group of besties, and you're just sort of locked in a room going, we can do anything, because anyone that exists outside the door to help us make this is helping us make what we want to make. And we can get because it's so light and efficient, and there's so much trust from minute -100 at the table, you're like, oh, we can do anything and move in any direction. So there's something really it is thrilling in the sense of it's scary because you're like, what could we pull off? What do we want to try? But thrilling in that sense of the safety of knowing that you're in good hands with people that you love and respect and care about, and that you've tethered yourself to through the bondage of legal documents, that you're yeah, this is a marriage. You're not getting out without lawyers getting called in. So settle in, we're gonna do this forever. And it's very fun and exciting. That's not a better answer. It's not a better answer. I didn't do it.
It's very interesting to look at the difference between having business partners and creative partners, because I think as creative partners, we had already done Misfits and Magic together. There are various constellations of us that have worked together in different settings and on different projects, but getting together and growing as a team creatively, I have noticed by the time that we've gotten to other projects together and we have any one of the squad with one another, it's just seamless. It is truly like dancing, and we've just gotten so in sync with each other, and there's so much trust and playfulness in our creative partnerships together that it's a delight, because I'm very fortunate to have a lot of other work that is creatively fulfilling, but this is something special and uncompromising and thrilling. And on the other hand, having business partners, it's that same level of trust and of sort of evolving, because I think from when we first started discussing all of this, I think 2 years prior to actually launching, it looked different than it does now. I mean, the success of Worlds Beyond Number has changed my life, I know for sure. And having it be with these people that I feel like, we as Abria said, now we have sort of legal binding reasons to be together, and it feels very good to have that be with people whose savvy that I trust, business-wise as well. So for me, it's the difference between then and now over the last year is about how those bonds, both creatively and practically, have solidified.
You know what? I do want to +1 the like constellation thing, because me and Lou's episode of Bastard Purple Worm Kill Kill came out yesterday, and it was really fun watching it. And I was like, oh man, I like remember the vibe of being at a table. Like, it's a small table, it's very silly and fun and feels like a show. But there is something about the like, I don't have like Lou in my eyeline, but I like do. There's like a sense of court vision when you're like, oh yeah, like that's my homie right there. It's gonna be like, all of that feels easier because you've got like a part of our little constellation there, and it feels like that every time a couple of us like line up. It's really fun. I like didn't consider that, but it's actually quite huge. It's very cool.
I think, you've heard, like, they talk about improvisers or other creative partners who say, like, I just know what this person is doing without turning around to see what they're doing. And it's starting to really feel like that, where especially, like, Bria and I will look at each other and just go,
oh my God, yes. Just like, got it, yeah, okay.
I really have to recommend, as much as you're able to watching this, if there are people that you're close to in your life, sign paperwork with them. Right now, all the people I hang out with, let me be clear, my wife, my child, and the 3 people on this call, if I want to stop hanging out with them, I need to do a lot of paperwork. You understand what I'm saying? That's where you want to be. You want to be in a situation where it's not just like, oh, maybe I'll see them, maybe I won't. No, if you stop seeing them, it means the structures in your life tangibly have moved.
Friendship prenup.
Oh my God. Friendship peanut. So good. So important. You got to do it.
I was Erica the first one that used the term business married? Let's get business married. Yes, I love that. I love it. We got business married. It's great.
Lou, talk about our beautiful business marriage.
Yeah.
Sure. Always. I mean, I think it's our business marriage is an incredible and almost, I think for me, the ideal creative environment where the people who are makers of the thing are also as involved in the logistics of the thing. And so there is never that contrast between what can we do and the means to do it. There's always, everyone is all in on this story, and also logistically, how do we make it its best and share it with as many people as we can. And I think it just leads to both better business and better creative.
I love that. I love that so much. I want to shine a light on your editor for a second, because this is not only like some of the like cleanest audio, but the like sound design is perfect and the music is fantastic. So I'm curious, from the process wise, I know you guys record the actual episodes, then he adds that in. Do you guys have input on like the sound design element of what he builds, or does he show it to you and then you give him kind of feedback afterwards?
That's the crazy part, is there is no pipeline for really giving notes with Taylor. He really was so locked into the vision that we had. That was part of why we brought him on board and our business marrying him. Is because, like, I remember I was in a big bathtub in San Francisco when I heard the first episode that he cut of and so like the Citadel scene of the flight from the Citadel, and it was just like that. It was like that. We hadn't really given him notes. We hadn't even hired him yet. He did that. And he was like, here, see, this is kind of what I had in mind for your podcast if you hire me. And I was like, that's it. That's the sound of the world, of this world. And so, yeah.
I love it. I think too, there was an early period of time when we were exploring the idea of making this podcast, and we were in conversation not only with each other but with other people that we knew in the podcast space. We were fact finding. We were trying to find out about what makes podcasts actually play different. And in those conversations with Taylor, there was an email Taylor sent us that all of us reacted to like we just watched a unicorn come out of the forest. It was just an email of like, because you're talking to people often about the business, and the business is an important part of it, and you're talking about working relationships and logistics and studio spaces and stuff like that. And Taylor sent us an email talking about art, talking about music, what music means, what stories mean, how he felt about what this project could do, and the story we might tell. And the reality is, the Taylor made it clear to us that there would not have to be a noting process, because noting takes time. As all of us work on a lot of shows, and the hardest thing in the world is when you actually start to run out of bandwidth and immediately what you realize is, what I need is people who get it.
Yes.
And Taylor in that email said, oh, Taylor gets it. When we record these sessions and tell these stories, they go into the mighty swell of Taylor's muscular arms. Taylor's a muscular guy, and that's a big part of what he brings to the podcast. And he takes them off and fully has a deep, intuitive, and studied understanding of our characters and what this story is about. And so when it goes off, it comes back perfect. And that's the kind of collaborator that Taylor is. It's like, and if you can find that, oh my God, what a blessing to have that in a creative partner.
Yeah. And truly, Brennan's not exaggerating. I remember the art email and was like, oh, I think on an emotional level, he gets what we're going for. And then when we got back The Wizard Then and Now, that first piece of the Citadel, I remember like, I think we got it back, and I immediately texted Brennan like, oh, did you tell him what you and I were talking about the way I wanted the Citadel to sound? It was very like marching band, forward and brassy and loud. And Brendan was like, oh yeah, no, I didn't send any of that. That's just what he thought. And I was like, okay, well, I'll never be more bought in. I can't respond to this email because it will be terrifyingly enthusiastic. We must whatever it takes, lock him down. Like, he gets it in a way that isn't just sort of the like philosophy of the story and what we want to do. He like understood it at a level of execution from minute one that was just like, oh, we were always meant to work together. It's kind of crazy. We didn't know you sooner kind of thing. I always have that like weird feeling with friends where I'm like, God, why didn't I run into you like way earlier? And that's what it felt like getting Taylor in the mix. And he's just so good. And again, so buff. My favorite part of camp is getting there in the morning. And he's like still working out a little bit. And I'm like, I guess don't stop. And he's like, I have to. This is the most embarrassing thing in the whole world. But he keeps it tight for us at camp. And that's actually the most important thing that he does.
Yeah, that's what you want in a business marriage. But actually, I'm looking at this a picture of from ye early days. God, it was 2022, and there's a big whiteboard. Thank you, Lou Wilson. And it has a list of like 9 traits that we wanted in if we were to have some sort of other business associate. Because there was a discussion like, do we own this whole thing? Do we, work with one of the many fantastic podcast studios in Los Angeles? And number one we had was enthusiasm. And that is something like Taylor went above and beyond, and he continues to do so. Also, something that was important to us was our values. You know, as a company, that is something that, again, I know there's this dichotomy between like creative. Yes, we're creative and we follow our hearts and everything, but on the other hand, want to stand by the principles that we espouse both in our narratives and, you know, in our everyday lives. And, you know, Taylor comes from a background of he helped, you know, unionize workers in the past, and he's like a sort of dyed-in-the-wool socialist with ideas about, you know, how creatives should be treated and worked with, and that was something that was very valuable, definitely to me.
And a last thought, speaking just to the essentialness of Taylor, it's like when we started doing the podcast a year ago, we recorded separately. We would record as the four of us and then send it to Taylor in New York. And now Taylor is at every recording session because his muscles we need to see them because it gives us strength, but also just because, like, to your point, there's this exciting thing when we come out and we do a scene and Taylor will like pitch a little bit what he's thinking, and it is like intoxicating just to know that the insane energy that we just had playing together is about to be matched by his creative prowess.
I love that. I can't believe he just goes and does that so perfectly himself. That's absolutely insane.
Well, also, he and Brennan have little whispered conferences that all of us have to agree, and I have to listen in at the keyholes. There's like big old-fashioned keyholes in this space that we record in, and he and Brennan will be like, "Wait, I have an idea. Come with me."
Yeah, we turn into Parent Trap, just hijinks children at the door, like.
Yeah, poking our heads out, one on top of the other.
Yep.
I love it. I think my first thought when this first got launched was, wow, Brennan apparently doesn't have enough worlds to build in his head. He needs a completely new one to like make a full book like he made fun of Matt for. So very well done with that. Yeah, my question is, I remember in one of the adventuring academies, you had talked about how, in your opinion, wizards that are on adventures, if they're going to be training, it shouldn't necessarily be like just a school. It should be, oh, we're going to go kill monsters and goblins and stuff. Was that a big part of why you wanted a lot of the wizards, if not all the wizards we meet in this, to be essentially soldiers? Or is that something that came... So
that part of the world was built to accommodate Abria's vision for her character. People that know have heard me talk about GMing in the past. If your goal in tabletop is to recreate the stories, or to live in the stories that changed your life when you were a kid and first listening to fantasy and sci-fi stories that meant that to you, the story of Star Wars can't just happen to anybody, right? Luke is Vader's son. The story of Lord of the Rings isn't just a bunch of random people in the Prancing Pony and Bree, right? It's the specific people who circumstance and the world and the march of history in these fantastical worlds put together. So for me, I always want the world and its heroes to be built in tandem, because that's how stories are built, right? It's not, without, what is Narnia without the Pevensies? It's like these worlds match the heroes that are in them, which is what makes the story so compelling. So Umora was incredibly volcanic by the time we had these characters, right? It was basically themes and certain tentpole, like almost like cosmological concepts. But there's a reason the campaign is called The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, and it's because it's about Ame, Suvi, and Ersilon. And so the world was developed. As soon as Abria was like, I think I want to play a wizard of a great imperial power, where that wizardry is the training and culture around that wizardry is about service to that empire. That is where I go, got it, and I jump in my hole, and you just hear ratchets and gears flying and things getting put together, and that all comes to that point. So it's certainly not a reference to I know the part you're talking about where I was talking about XP versus milestone. We are very much milestone leveling and not XP leveling this campaign. So the militancy of the wizards is a reflection of what the world needed to be to allow for the character that Maria needed to play.
I have nothing to add. Yes. I wanted to be a nasty little wizard, and then Brendan built me a nasty little world.
That perfectly. My next question, actually, can you talk to me about why you wanted to play this character that has this duality of this like loyalty and reverence for these friends that she made when she was a kid, but has this very antagonistic aspect as well because she grew up essentially becoming a soldier and just has a completely different understanding of the world from these two? What was like your thought process and what did you want to explore with that?
I think there's always something really interesting when you look at what D&D parties tend to be for like ease of dropping into pre-established narratives. You want a group that has like a wide coverage of like ability sets so you can handle anything that this like pre-built world can throw at you. Knowing that the world was going to be built along the lines of the story we want to tell and the characters we wanted to play, it felt like a really fun opportunity to build a character that doesn't have a like perfect paradigm to function with this group well. Like it's something very like proggy inside of like playing a lot of D&D and playing a lot of RPGs and like running a lot of games and not being afraid of like tension, the thing that when I'm behind a DM screen is totally normal and fine. How much can we push that boundary when you're on the same side of the table as everyone else? But really living in that idea of like how do you go on an adventure when everything you've built around you, all the things that like tether you to the world, do not want that for you. And the paradigms that you've built and the way you understand the world, like that becomes the arc and the adventure internal to Subi that I get to play with, which is learning that the world isn't what you were like sort of what was drummed into you. And that process of unlearning and realization is a thing that I don't think happens a lot in like normal D&D parties and like actual play. Because you come in and you're like, I don't even know what the world is because I didn't buy the book to read it before we like came to sit down for our game. So we'll all learn it together. So it's been a really fun process going like, here are the ways in which Subi is really like formed and almost beginning to like calcify into a version of herself. Like Subi's trajectory, if not changed by the love and care and adventure with Ame and Ersilon, is steel. Like you can see it. There's nothing crazy in like calling that shot. So all of the fun for me is like sitting there and having time with Steel and watching the ways in which Subi is meaningfully diverging from that trajectory just by like proximity to her friends who are like tremendous and like big movers in the world in their own right. And Subi is learning that on top of how to like be good for people that she has cared about so much from her childhood.
Can I just say something? Really quickly?
No.
Okay, so it's wild to me. We play these games and we tell these stories, and if you are having fun, you're doing it right. I think that a lot of people who play tabletop play to, they play to have fun, and their fun is about living in a fantasy world, or just like spending time with their friends or everything. And I think our version of fun, specifically at this table, is telling a really compelling and messy narrative, and exploring themes that we find interesting and creating parts of a world that are really gritty. I want to say gritty, like not in like the reboot way, but just in a just like textured, like really textured, and everything that denotes. So I think it's wild to me that in the process of making that, and again the world building, informing the characters, informing the world building, that Abria has chosen to outright sit in the discomfort of playing a character that is so much a part of and representative of that world. Because it's so funny you just saying, what is it like when the world is at odds with your the view you've been raised with of that. And I think that that's something that is relatable to literally everyone, but who wants to put that in their fun time story game?
I do.
We do. That's our table, you know? And it's really, I don't know, it's astonishing to me. So, and I mean, even things with Ersilon as well, of like, I want to play a guy that is having a bad time in this world. Is like not a common prompt for character creation in Dungeons and Dragons, or you know, really any tabletop game. And I think I just find it so fun and thrilling to explore these themes and these characters, and just it's very unusual, I think.
Yeah, Ame reckoning with having a priority set that is not like valorized by the typical play inside of D&D is so cool that we like built a whole class about it. And it was like, here's how to honor and hold community, because that's a thing we love in story and haven't seen a lot of clean ways to drive toward inside of like this game and this system that we like. And Ersilon binding himself and cursing himself with like the desire to do more is hot. Like, look, it's cool. I love playing an antagonistic character. I do not have the hardest job at the table. Watching Lou carry so effectively the ways in which you can catch yourself and like and trap yourself inside of the thing you want to be or a promise you made to yourself in the past is like, it's a masterclass. Like everyone's doing the goddamn most right now. And it's so cool to watch. Like it's my favorite part of playing The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One are the moments where I get to just watch and be like the audience for my friends telling a story that I love as dearly as anything I've ever experienced or like consumed in fiction in my life.
I love that. And then Erica, one of the things that stood out to me with Ame was the idea that to witches, magic is not about authority, it's about responsibility. And kind of, especially with that very different perspective than the wizards. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and maybe Tease, because I know I'm guessing that we're going to be seeing a lot more of the witch stuff going on in Arc 3. So how does that kind of come into play with Ame, especially now that she's split off from her friends because of the responsibility aspect?
You know how in life it's difficult to know what the right thing to do is, and how there's this choice paralysis and the paralysis of like you go through, there's all these levels of choices you have to make your every day, and they can range from what do I want for breakfast all the way to how do I make my life count in this world and change it in like marked, sustainable ways. And I think that when you play a game with your friends, on a certain level, you want those decisions to be easier or to be informed by something like this, group of this kingdom is all bad, right? So you can just be like, great, I have no hesitation when I do these things. I think one thing about Ame that was both so exciting and remains terrifying is that she has to make all of those decisions, and there is so much weight to them, and she's just a little guy. And that is something that of myself that I think I bring to the world of Umora. It's hard to make a decision, but as we saw in the first arc, like sometimes any decision is better than making none, because inaction leads to disaster and complacency. And I wanted a character who, like, both mechanically and narratively could shake the foundations of the world, but in ways that are sort of like the little decisions you make every day, right? Because it's like you can't change the world by deciding what you want for breakfast, but if you make these little changes and you're mindful and conscientious and do your best while extending grace to yourself, I think that every decision that you make can matter in a profound way that we don't even see, that people in the world don't even know about, right? It could just make a difference in your world. And so Brennan and Maisie Veselak and Brandon Stoddard and Hannah Rose and all of the folks who contributed to the witch class, like, made that mechanically viable. And then the table supports that in such a big way, I think, because that's hard. How do you make a character who has to make all these little decisions and big decisions that will sway the course of the narrative, but aren't always optimal in the way that decisions in gameplay we want them to be.
I love that. And then Lou, the amount of emotion you put into saying is just like, it hits me every single time. You aren't even saying anything. I'm like, how are you doing this? How am I walking down the street and I feel like I'm gonna cry? That's not fair.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. That's like amazing. One of the things I love about Ersilon is he has become a part of this world, but is not of this world. But he also seems to have an understanding of it even deeper than Ame and Suvi to a degree. Like, he's able to fit into places that these guys aren't. Can you talk to me kind of about playing someone that's like straddling the line between the spirit world and the human world, but also is pulled at times between his two friends? Because like when Ame had to like leave, he kind of had to make that split second decision of who am I going to support on this.
100%. I mean, I think it's like in building the character, like from the beginning, right? We described this like spirit. Like, I remember we didn't even like talk about, like, we just had, like, I remember us at our very first camp describing just the image of a Fae child looking through a briar at a night on a hill. And I think that there was something to that, which is to be of your world, but to desperately want to know and to understand and to be a part of another. But also have this, but in that split, be disconnected from both, that I think makes Ersilon like this exciting character to play, who can have these deeply emotional moments because of that kind of unmooredness. I think there's something to, especially Ersilon, as we've seen him in arcs 1 and 2. What is Ersilon's cause other than his own dreams and hopes and his investment in these two people that exist as his entire community in this great wide world? And so as we kind of move through this world, Ersilon is kind of untethered other than to what Ame wants and what Suvi wants. And this ideal that doesn't even exist anymore. So it's exciting to kind of be moving forward, and kind of as Suvi gets more responsibilities and as Ame gets more responsibilities, I do think that Ersilon is starting to wonder what is his place in this world. And I think that in arc 3, mayhaps, we get some answers to that question.
Wow. Okay. You got me thinking. All right. I like that.
There it is.
For you guys, because you all have played together in like Dimension 20, you've each played in a lot of different games. How do you approach this game in the world building sense, and like just as a like player creating these characters? How do you approach this one differently? Because I love how it's really story forward, and I love that it's not trying to level up every episode. Like, what is your approach with this where it stands out to you versus every other game that you get to play?
I think about a thing that Brennan said a few in our fireside chats that we do for our Patreon. A thing that Brennan said a couple of episodes ago about encouraging us to burn his world down because we know that we will have the space to make it anew. And I think that kind of, for me personally, lies at the core of how I move through this world, is the idea that we can break things and it's okay. I think that there are other performance spaces that exist where I get a little nervous of like, am I putting a lot on somebody? Am I creating a situation that you have to remake, and it's stressful for you if I take insane swings? And I think that this is the long form format of this project. It creates that space where we can burn it down. I mean, truly, when Suvi stayed on the dock and the party began to split, I was like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what are we all gonna do our own thing? And then once Suvi did it, I decided I could do it too. So it's just like those opportunities exist in this world to kind of burn down, I think, maybe some like traditional party dynamics and kind of D&D dynamics that I think I've carried with me through a lot of other projects.
I think that an important distinction is that, well, first of all, yeah, we have all the time in the world. Second of all, there's consequences. Like, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, I think. So it feels like a very weighty world with consequences. We can absolutely burn it down, but then we have to like follow, well, then what's the next step for that, you know? And I think that in a lot of campaigns, there isn't the same kind. We have a synergy in our campaign of players and DM and a love for this world and the story that we have ongoing that allows us to make really big swings. And like in some cases, like Abria does like a narrative alley-oop, we call it, where like she'll call a shot, like make some sort of move, and then it'll like barrel through and we see it pay off, and it's just like, oh, of course that would happen. And it's because all of us somehow knew to like take that thing that she was doing and like run to the end zone with it. I've lost the thread of
No, you did perfect.
Yeah. Sports.
I've never been prouder.
All that popped into my head was a breathing going, I'm gonna punish you for not knowing basketball.
No, it's okay. It's a foot basketball and we're good. I loved it. I think to piggyback off of that, like, yes, the big swings are it. And it's nice that I didn't have to lead with that one, because that does feel like the big one and the one I've played with a lot. But I think there's a subtler one of every time I've like ever leaned into like min-maxing a character, like munchkinning a character, it's usually with the sense of like, there's something about this world and the stakes that are being offered by the story that we're telling that like, I need to like bring my A game in order for the story to like carry off. Like if we look at Calamity, Laren is a busted build because the stakes of the world were such that like, these were supposed to be like the heroes of like the high point in an age of magic. So it was like, yeah, make sure this is like the most like stomp wizard you've ever built. And that's why there's something inside this game though, that even at low level, even as we're like getting those first bits of like class features and abilities, I've been sitting on several of them for a while because there's no pressure to be the like optimized self moving through this narrative. Like I don't have to be the best level 2 wizard in order for like Brennan to build the story around like our actions. And there's something about the like having a sense of like, I can take my time and let Suvi develop at a rate that feels naturalistic to my gameplay and what the world is doing right now, that I don't think I've really experienced anywhere else. And like it does feel so different to be like, yeah, I can hold off. She doesn't have access to that yet. It's not important that she can do that, even if mechanically I've been like granted that. Suvi is where she is in this moment and is making the choices that she can from like where she is exactly in this place and time. And that's such a gift.
Creativity works best in circumstances that are as close to real as possible. there's so like the term jungle gym, right, is a recreation of elements of the jungle. It's like you can hang from these bars and like brachiate around like a gibbon or a monkey. You can do these things that are from this environment, but it's created its habitat. And in the same way, like when you create puzzles for people, often there is a degree of it's really hard as a GM when you're creating things to go, if there's a right answer to this, if there's a thing you have to remember to trick the guard, if there is a weakness that the monster has that I foreshadowed here, and you can make things that are really satisfying on a narrative level, but they don't prompt creativity because there's a right and a wrong answer. There's things coming up in chapter 3. I'm thinking of like how Suvi solves some problems in certain ways, and things that Ersilon chooses to do, and the unintended consequences therein, and all this stuff like, and Ame having to make some incredibly hard calls in chapter 3 that only get better because the world has the benefit. That's the thing that's newest to me about a GM in this context, is the world has the added benefit of all the complexity of the previous chapters and stories, which means that people can be, when you're not on the jungle gym and you're in the actual jungle, the environment becomes so complex that you can make creative choices because the world is dynamic and it's an ecosystem, and you can surprise me because it's not my job to invent puzzles for you that have right and wrong solutions. I'm trying to develop a world that is so rich and consistent that you can do things that surprise everybody at the table, GM and yourself included. And that is the best feeling, and it's what makes it, I think, feel like those sort of epic stories. Is the richer the world, the longer it's had to marinate, the more you get the feeling of being shocked by those things that echo the great fantasy stories that we all grew up on. So there you go.
Also, I'd like to share this. It's so funny you should say jungle gym replicating the conditions of a jungle, because one of my favorite facts is that they have found that making playgrounds more dangerous for children is helpful to them. They find that they will learn about danger and injury better, and so they will get injured less as adults. And when they're kids, they can recover. It's sort of like a safe way for them to test their boundaries and limits. But it's a little more dangerous. So like in Germany, insurance adjusters were like, we gotta stop making our playgrounds so kid safe.
I saw Erica huck a stick at a kid's bicycle spokes and said, "This is for your own good," and then speed away. I saw it. It was beautiful. That's what care looks like.
Beautiful. That kid is gonna always be very careful around wheels now.
Yeah. And more than that, it's the social dynamic of like other kids hearing about that kid. A full adult hucked a stick into little Billy's bike, and now we know we have to fear adults holding long objects.
Right, that kid is in an arm cast and says, "Noted actual play performer Erika Ishii hucked a stick into the wheels of my Huffy, and I went over the handlebars."
But
and
then everyone shouted, "No one will believe you!" So, there's that.
My favorite thing about this entire conversation is I was talking to my friend who has an 8-month-old like 2 days ago, and I was like, kids need to get hurt. That's how you learn.
Yeah. Oh my God. Everyone knows or was the kid that like had a disastrous turn on the monkey bars, and you're like, cool, learn your limits.
Yes. That was
Are you one of the little flip off the top kids? Or are you like, I'm just using this jungle gym as prescribed and going across?
No, I fully got a black eye on a jungle gym once.
Yeah.
My older brothers convinced me to let go of a rope swing that was attached to a tree and went off the side of a hill. So you understand that if you get on the rope at the top of the hill and you swing, the hill continues to descend, but the parabola of the rope sends you like 40 feet in the air. And I dropped and sprained my wrist, and I started crying, and I chased my brother with a stick with my good arm because I was so mad at him for his bad advice.
Like,
So mad.
I was the kid that got double jumped out of a trampoline into most of the pool. Top half on the side, bottom half in the pool.
Trampolines.
Yeah. Like a belly flop, but on the concrete part.
Oh,
Taylor, let the article reflect I was a perfect child who never once suffered injury and yet learned all of the lessons of this world. For I watched my friends be beaten and battered and said that that will not be me.
Are you Bruce Willis from Invincible, or what's the M. Night
I am,
Shyamalan
and I
movie?
have never swam in a pool once, for I know that I will sink to the bottom immediately. I live a life by invincible rules.
The title of the article is "Lose Better Than Everyone." Got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
So noted.
Yes. That's it. That's what I was hoping to convey.
I like the implication that like Lou learned from child us before ever knowing us, but got the lessons.
Well, I have a very. Oh, go ahead.
I was to say it's a true child's adventure.
There it is. There it is.
Oh my gosh, I want to talk to you guys about this show for like 4 more hours.
I love it.
We gotta talk after arc 3. We gotta.
Oh my gosh. Arc 3.
Let's make it a
is
date.
So good.
Let's make it a date.
I love it. Yeah, we just had camp for chapter 3, and it's one of the first times after telling an enormous amount of story that was every single player here takes swings that made my jaw hit the floor, and the wild thing about it too, for me at least, is we got to the end of it exhausted and we're like, when can we play again? And we're playing incredibly soon because we were like, we gotta find out, like, we're the first audience for the story. Part of actual play is we don't know what's going to happen either. So we're all sitting here being like, what happens next? Like, we all want to know. So we're playing again real soon.
I'm doing other work, and all of my like sort of passive and like travel time is just still like brain bugged by like, I don't know, like this game thoughts, and I'll randomly like send a text and be like, anyway, I've been thinking about this for 2 days.
I'm still very much in it, you know, in terms of investment of like, oh God, like I wanna go back right now. I have ideas. I've got my playlist for next season. I've got my little notes.
I gotta make a playlist. Thank you.
Playlist.
All right, I'm just gonna speed around this real quick before we gotta go. Brennan, favorite part of being the fox?
The fox is a part of my brain that I think it's just like there's certain NPCs that are relaxing to play, and the fox is very relaxing to play. It's playing a creature that doesn't need community but voluntarily chooses to love people, which makes him kind of like alien and surprising in some ways, but also there's just all these things that are so freeing of a creature that, so I went to a philosophy, and I have a lot of anxiety and need for like consistency and logic, and it's really fun to play a creature that literally doesn't understand what the problem with being a hypocrite is, where it's like where he's like, you know what I mean, where he's like, I want this, and you're like, but yesterday you said this, and he's like, why are you bringing that up? Like, what do you mean? I contradicted myself? I said something different yesterday? Okay, either I lied yesterday or today. What are you worried about? Like, like literally, what are you worried? I don't even get it. Like, he's so, there's something so, it's a weird thing that I tap into where I get to, the fox is a character I get to by taking a bunch of switches in my brain and turning them off. I don't have to add extra stuff for him. It's like, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. Fox. It's just great.
Being stymied by the fox is my favorite thing, because I can just feel like the fox just flicks the like needle on the record of my thought. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not acting. That's Abria fully getting like derailed. It's perfect.
The fox going, I'll find a way out. I'm just gonna explode the city. Masterful.
No one said don't be a terrorist, and that's on us.
How is this little animal supposed to know how thermodynamics, you know? He just knows you put sand in the hole, it makes a place where you can go somewhere. I'm gonna kick these barrels of sand over. This guy, what is this guy? He's not on the Manhattan Project.
No
This is
consequences for the fox.
If you're listening to this, if you feel like inserting the fox into one of the group scenes from Oppenheimer, please go ahead.
Please, yes.
He's like, what are we talking about? Is this how we get out? What's going on?
I look forward to that edit, please.
I need it so bad. And I love the one-shots you guys have done. Erica, I can't believe that was your first time as a DM. It was fantastic. And Abria, Space Cram is psychotic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Space Cram, my God, so good.
I've never felt less in control in my life.
It's so funny. Well, I have to shout it out too, because we did a one shot in Umora, not in the main storyline of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild one. It's going up on the fireside, I think, right before we get into chapter 3. It was unbelievable. It was so much fun, and it was literally the most fluid. We started with nothing, and we're playing in a rich corner of a place that I'll just be in love with forever in Umora in like minutes. It was like just a few little let's play a game in Umora. Beep, boop, boop. Deeply in love with these characters. And it all happens on mic. It's not like we pre-planned anything for it. It's
we
like
literally showed up with nothing, and then Brennan was, he was saying like, describe a feature of this town, and I was like, blah, and then he built that world based on it, and built that world, named it, like had it just informed the rest of the game, and I really loved that one shot.
It's so good. Like immediately getting protective of it, where you're like, this is a perfect little piece. And I remember the vibes of the rest of the game we're playing. Leave it. Don't you even look in this area. Where is it? If anything happens on a map, I'm not driving toward it. I refuse. I will burn the world around this perfect little nugget. Don't you touch it.
don't you touch it. Don't you touch it.
Yeah, us, what is it? Us sewing. Yeah, fuck yeah. Us sleeping. No, Brennan, why did you do this to us?
Salmon!
It's Brennan ammunition is what you're saying. That's the one.
Yeah.
Everyone just remember to fall in love with things. That's all I have.
Don't say
Just
that.
fall in love with things. Why?
Don't
What's
say
the
that.
problem?
That's like your what is your worst fear move. Don't do that.
That's a do you feel the weakest at the elbow or the shoulder energy?
Oh God, yeah.
And I do not like it. We were goofing. We were doing goofs when you said that.
They're just questions. They're literally just questions. I don't know what the problem is.
No.